and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised. Good morning everybody, and welcome. Well, not quite on safari. There's a little bit of precipitation here in the western fringes of the Kruger National Park. This is Safari Live.
Ready.
Standing by.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
I hope you're all very well wherever you happen to find yourselves in the world. My name is James Henry. Jean-Andre is on camera. He's dressed for bushwalk, but unfortunately it is a little bit rainy, and sitting to my left-hand side, your right-hand side, Stefan Winterboer.
Thank you very much, James. Good morning, good morning. Yes.
Now, the reason we are here in this camping setup, aka the Moscow Circus, is because there has been a little bit of precipitation during the course of the night. I think it's probably going to clear out. We've sent out the brave lady, Tayla. She is out in the field looking for animals in the rain, and Steph and I have taken the, well, non-chivalrous route, and we've come into the tent here. So the plan for the rain is to try and keep broadcasting regardless of the weather. I'm pretty sure that in the next 10 minutes I'll probably head out on into the bush, and then Steph will man the tent for a while. But the plan is that we will do some interesting things here, hopefully. We will not run out of content, but that's going to depend largely on you and the questions that you give us. So please do talk to us during the course of the morning. Hashtag Safari Live, questions at WildEarthTV, and we will answer all the questions that you want to. The radio is now exploded in my ear. We're okay now. Phew, that was close. Steph, did you stay awake because of the rain last night?
No, I didn't actually. I actually only remembered it, well, only heard it raining at about 4:30ish about, I think. Before that, I think it was just a little bit of wind and not much else going on. And you?
I don't think I woke up to the rain. I had a fan going. This, of course, on account of the unspeakable number of mosquitoes that live in the vicinity of where we live. We're not sure why there's so many mosquitoes at the moment, but there are many. Now, many of you, I don't think, will have seen our great new collection of death that we have behind us here on the shelf. Chandri, if you might peruse the shelf of death, aka the museum. We have a wildebeest, we have a zebra. Could be a racehorse, but we think it's a zebra. Then we have a springbok. Now, many of you will get into the details of them, but that is a springbok. Then over there, we have a serval, and we'll look at all of these things. That's a terrifying baboon. That's a monkey, and that's a genet. So those are some of the new things we found, and there are some more on the way. So that's quite fun. And then just over Steph's head, we've got a whole tray of insects. And we'll have a little look at those too. There will be a bit of a reflection there, and Jean-Andre will shout at me as a result of that. Anyway, that's how it is. Now, Christine, you would like to see the baboon skull. This probably on account of the fact that you were watching yesterday morning when young Hosanna had a bit of a nasty experience. So what I'm going to do is hand this to Stefan. This is the baboon skull. I nearly got shouted at by Jean-Andre again there. Is that right, Jean-Andre? May I hand it to Stefan?
I would never shout at you,
James. Jean-Andre says he'd never shout at me. He is lying. There you are.
Thank you for this.
And the point of that, well, while Steph describes it, I'll pick something else up.
So this has to be one of the most terrifying skulls in this collection at the moment, only because of this, I don't know, all too human expression in the face up to the eyes, and then for these massive canines that they have. Just have a look at that. Those are easily as long as a lion's fangs, not quite as thick as a lion's fangs, and then unlike a lion, which are round, almost like pegs, these are sharpened. You can have a look at how they close past one another like this, sharpening that blade-like edge.
And I think the reason that they are so much sharper, perhaps, is that a baboon is not necessarily a bone eater. They will eat meat, but those canines are ostensibly for defense.
Yeah, exactly. Fighting for mates.
They're not used for kill, so they're not biting bones and things. So
it's a display.
Sharper. Now, this is a serval skull. This is not the skull of a young leopard. But it's probably not too much smaller than young Hosana's skull. His might be slightly bigger. Now let me just put this next to the baboon that Stef is holding. And that is roughly the size differential between the skulls of the two animals that were in conflict yesterday. Now, if you did miss it, what happened was that a baboon troop came across the royals as they were feeding on an impala. The baboons gave chase, the leopards ran away, and the big male baboon of the troop actually had contact with Hosana. And we think he caught him on the ground. We think the little leopard probably swatted the baboon and shot up a tree. The baboon went straight up after him, but because the little leopard is a little bit lighter, he managed to perch on the very top of the tree, and using his height advantage, he swatted down at the baboon, who kept trying to grab him and pull him out of the tree. And you can see, if he'd got hold of him, well, it wouldn't really have been very pretty at all. Now, on that rather somber and well, scary note, let's head across to Tayla McCurdy and find out how the rain is treating her.
The rain is not so bad in the morning. It's actually quite nice and refreshing and cooling, and it's putting a lovely layer of sort of mist on the ground, and hopefully the grass will absorb that all up and continue growing. Well, good morning. My name is Tayla, and on camera I've got Brian and, of course, the thumb. There it is. Is it suit and tie again? It is suit and tie, very elegant, very smart as always. I always feel very underdressed when I'm around the thumb, especially in the morning. Now, we are on the search for some lions. That's what we're hoping to see this morning. And we did see a few footprints, a few little tracks. They seem to be going west. We're going to hopefully try and pick up on the rest of them. I'm not sure if the Nkuhumas were found yesterday afternoon. I wonder, maybe you know, maybe you heard something that I didn't hear. The birds didn't perhaps whisper in my ear this morning. But if you do perhaps know or remember if anything was said about the Nkuhumas, I'd love to hear from you. So you can either hashtag Safari Live with that information, or you can email it to questions@WildEarthTV. I very much like to hear from you on this chilly morning. Although I don't think it's too chilly. Like I said, I think it's actually quite fresh. It's nice. It's better than the sweltering heat when the sweat is dripping down your forehead. That's not ever pleasant. So this is quite nice. Oh, thank you, Lucy. Lucy said that there were cubs playing at the dam cam this morning. Thank you very much, lionesses and cubs, of course. Thank you so much, Lucy, for that wonderful information. Well, that gives me something to go on, and it reminded me of what I should do. So at the moment, I'm making my way to Mvubu Road. So I'm heading to Vultures cut line, and then I'm going to go along Mvubu Road to get to behind the lodge, and hopefully we'll find them there, perhaps just lurking under a guarri tree or in a drainage line, just trying to avoid this little spit. But it's not too bad. Now I'm trying to work out which way the clouds are coming, if they're coming and which way they're going, to figure out this little nimbus stratus cloud that we have found ourselves underneath. It's spitting a little bit. Also, seen as though it is spitting quite a bit, you may see a bit of a cloth come across the screen. That's just Brian just wiping it, keeping it nice and clean, so don't be alarmed you haven't lost us. There it is again, just to show you, just to keep it squeaky clean. Right, we're looking carefully, and hopefully those lions haven't gone too far from the camera. I am waiting for the other guests to leave the lodge before I go venturing around there. But we've found some buffaloes. Hello, buffalo. Just going to go a little bit further forward. It seems like a nice herd. Let's have a look at this cow here. No, don't walk away from us. We like you. There she is. Good morning. Have you perhaps lost a member to the lions today at all? No? Doesn't seem like it. I'm working on learning how to communicate with the animals. It's not going too well so far. Brian and I were discussing if we could have one superpower. It would either be to speak to animals or to speak to the plants and the vegetation. I like the idea, Brian, though, of speaking to the vegetation. Brian made a very good point. Imagine having a conversation with a 500-year-old tree. Wouldn't that be interesting? The wealth of knowledge that would come from that tree would be amazing. And the horror stories, I'm sure, too. We've just stumbled across, it's just a very small breeding herd. It doesn't seem to be particularly big. I can't hear very much communication going on amongst them, which we normally hear when we've got those big herds of a few hundred coming through. There's probably about maybe 15 to 20 buffalo here, which is great. And I'm just listening because I think I can hear the hornbills again. It sounds like the southern ground hornbills are calling in the distance, which is quite exciting as well. You know that they're one of my favorite birds, and I absolutely love to spend time with them. So perhaps that could be on the cards for this morning as well. Now, these buffalo have come from sort of the DRC where we live and come out of the drainage line, and I presume that would have been the lion's next move, because they've come from the east and now they're maybe moving west, possibly trying to flush out some buffalo. And that's of course one of their favorite hunting grounds, around Hyena Road, around Central, around all those drainage lines. So that's sort of where we're going to head around to next and keep checking there. As you can see there, that buffalo is actually browsing. It's quite surprising that they're still eating leaves, even though there's plenty of grass to go around, just nibbling on a few little shrubs. We normally only see this behavior in the winter months when they get quite desperate, but I suppose if there's an opportunity, they're not going to say no. Oh, come here, let me catch you. Oh no. Sorry, I tried to catch an insect. Oh, I've got one. I'm going to try and catch it. Please stay there, don't fly, just be nice. She want to see an antlion. I want to show you an antlion. You're going to have to be very quick, Brian, because I suspect that it's going to fly. No, don't panic. There we go, settle down and then you can fly away. So this is and as quick as we saw it, it is now gone. No, if you got a quick look, it's about to try and fly and land on Brian's head. Now that was an antlion, and I'm sure you've possibly seen the little insects before. If not, we'll try and find one that perhaps hasn't been disturbed by the rain. But often when you walk outside, and maybe you'll remember this as a child, you walk outside and you see these little conical pits going down into the ground. I hope you know what I'm talking about. And normally it's a strange looking insect that lives at the bottom, and it's basically an ant trap, as the name suggests, antlion. Now that was the adult antlion that I had looked. So it had pupated, and it had turned into a beautiful, it looks almost like a very flimsy dragonfly if I had to describe it. But there's a few differences between them though. Obviously, I don't know if you noticed, when I had it in my hand, it sat nice and quietly with its wings closed to its body, unlike a dragonfly, which will often open its wings when it is perched, as well as their antennae being slightly different. On the antlion, they are clubbed, whereas they are not clubbed on the dragonfly. Oh, this herd of buffalo seems to be slightly bigger than what I expected. Hello everyone, we've now seemed to have found the bulk of the herd. It's okay everyone. Now, we're looking at these buffalo and they're giving us a bit of a stare, though I am not worried because I'm in the vehicle. That is the very typical buffalo death look that we get. Now, they seem fairly relaxed. They're not particularly bothered. This is quite normal. And I know that Kathy was wondering this morning, are the animals' behaviors altered by the rain? Now, Kathy, I think that would depend on the amount of rain that we've got and sort of the severity of it. At the moment, it's just a lovely little drizzle, so it's not bothering them at all. I mean, there's barely any water on their coats. You can see they're just looking a little bit damp. But if it gets to torrential rain, then what that does is like the same thing for us, is that it often muffles sound, having that heavy rain. And when we get heavy rain, often we have the lightning and the thunder to go with it. So it could indeed prevent them from hearing as well. And also, it's very unpleasant. So they should be hiding sort of in the thicket. They wouldn't be standing out in the open during torrential rain. So they'd be a little bit more secretive, but only just trying to find some shelter. But you can see they're obviously enjoying my conversation this morning. Well, the two on the right, they are very focused on me. But it looks like it's lifting up. I'm actually quite excited. It's actually brightened up quite a bit this morning. Already, just in the last 5 minutes, the clouds seem to be lifting. There's just the occasional little nimbostratus cloud, which is bringing the odd drizzle. But no big cumulonimbus clouds bringing thunderstorms, I'm afraid. We can only be so hopeful to encounter a big thunderstorm like we've had a few weeks ago. But the bush is looking beautiful, don't you think? Look at all that greenery as that buffalo disappears down into the distance. And off they go. They've changed their minds now. Now they crossed the road coming from the east, and now they went west, and now look at them. Now they're all coming back again. Perhaps they heard something, perhaps they smelled something that I can't smell. It's interesting. That one's got all the oxpeckers, and you can see the oxpeckers aren't feeding. Ooh, something startled them. What's wrong? No, I don't think it's us, because we've been sitting here very quietly. We haven't even really been moving the vehicle around too much. Perhaps it is just a scent that's come through. Half the herd doesn't seem to be reacting. I think sometimes buffalo can be a bit like sheep. If one does one thing, then they tend to follow and do exactly the same thing. There we go. See, they're sniffing the ground. Now, when this buffalo move, I'm going to go and try and have a look to see what they're smelling. You can see they're all quite interested. Well, not that one, just one. So I'm not going to try and guess as to what it was. Perhaps something has urinated there. But we'll go and have a look. Maybe something's walked there. Remember, the different animals have got various scent glands. Obviously, with the cats, we often see them urine spraying. They've got little glands in their cheeks when they often rub their faces up against the branches. And, of course, some of the antelope species have pedal glands, which are scent glands in between the hooves. And when they walk, they're actually depositing a little secretion down onto the ground as well. But let's go a little bit forward. I'm going to go, even though I know the buffalo are moving towards us, I would like to have a look and see what caught their attention. Check behind me that there isn't any lions sneaking up that I've completely missed. Let's try and have a look. Now, I'm just trying to have a look over here. It's quite difficult. I don't think it was particularly anything. I think it was actually just another buffalo that had perhaps walked back across. Because the only thing I can see on the ground is very old buffalo dung, which you can maybe see. It might be a bit closer. There it is. There are lots of buffalo footprints, but I don't see any scrapings of any sort. So I'm uncertain as to what it was. Well, that's quite interesting. It doesn't seem like too much, but they've all settled down now. No one else is running. Maybe it was just a nervous Nancy. Right. Ooh. Okay, thanks so much, Lucy. Lucy, you've been fantastic this morning with the updates on the lions. So I'm going to keep moving away from these buffalo now. Lucy's just mentioned that it seemed as though those lions went down Twin Dams Road. So they were sneaky. They went back even further east, which means I'm behind them. And we're going to have to keep moving on from these buffalo. But as I carry on, and try and get us around quite quickly and catch up with the movements of the lions, let's go back to James in the tent.
Well, it seems that the weather is not looking too bad, so I'll probably head out shortly and we'll leave Stef manning the fort here. But in the meantime, Tayla yesterday, during our rehearsal, found this leaf full of little caterpillar eggs. Now, I'll hand the caterpillar over to Stef while I focus on the microscope, and that's called a hospital pass, everybody, because I don't know what that thing's called, and so we'll just test Stef.
It's called a caterpillar.
It's called a caterpillar, says Stef. That's brilliant. Excellent stuff. Now let me try and focus in on these things. Turn up a bit of light here. The light is on full. Hang on, we need a black background, which we can achieve with great skill, can't we, Jandre?
Very ingenious.
Yes, very ingenious. Thank you, Rebecca. This comment from the Peanut Gallery. Rebecca is directing this morning, everybody. She's being sarcastic, which of course we know is only I'm allowed to do. Why can I not see this thing? Oh, for goodness sakes, really? Okay, let's see what that looks like. Sorry about this, everyone. Not showing great competence. Oh, there we go. Those, everybody, are the caterpillar eggs. They look like little golden pine cones. Isn't that cool? And we're pretty sure that they are the caterpillar eggs from the caterpillar that Stef has got in his paw. And we'll put that under the microscope too and show you the amazing colours. And we think that they're the same because they were found on the same bush. So they're not necessarily the same, but they could well be. And the bush is a red bush willow, a Combretum apiculatum, which of course is the most common tree that we get out here, and the tree from which the vegetation type here derives its name. Okay, Jean-Henri, let's have a look here. Very nice. Good. There you are, everyone. There is the caterpillar. Isn't he amazing? Look at his little hairs, perfectly aligned, beautiful. Greens and blacks and whites and golds and oranges. I suppose, Steph, what you might describe as aposematic coloration.
It looks quite distasteful. I mean, I don't want to put that in my mouth. I suppose if I was a bird, I would.
Yes. It looks almost like a bird dropping. And many, many caterpillars and things out here, everybody, are disguised as bird droppings. And that's obviously because birds don't like to eat their own droppings very often. And so that's why their caterpillar disguises itself as a bird dropping. Anyway, that will pupate into some form of moth or butterfly. I'm not sure which. We'll find out as time goes on. Now, a little bit like a child who has a silkworm selection, we're going to keep these here and see if we can't make them hatch. We'll feed them combretum leaves. That's Tayla's job when she's not on drive. She has to feed our collection of insects. Good. Very nice. Now, just to keep you posted, we are, of course, as live as Tayla is, out in the bush. Hashtag Safari Live, questions at WildEarthTV if you want to ask us any questions here in the tent. Like I say, short of the Great Moscow Circus, which I don't see swinging from the roof here, keeping things entertaining in here is going to be very much up to you as well as it is up to us. Jandre, how are your arms feeling? Right. He's nodding, so he seems to be okay. All right, now, let us have a look at the national animal. Stefan can tell you about the national animal there.
Quite often we get questions about the difference between springbuck and impala, and I thought that this was just a nice skull to show everybody that difference. I know they are two vastly different. This is our most common antelope, the impala. And this is the national animal, the springbuck. Now, I think that in terms of what is comparative from an environmental scale, I think the impala would probably be likened to a blessbuck, I would imagine. Whereas the springbuck is probably closer to a bushbuck in terms of size, maybe a little bit smaller. It's definitely a little bit smaller. Yeah. Sort of between a Great Dacre and a bushbuck, I would imagine that it would be. But what they do share a common trait in they're both horns. In other words, the horns grow from a bed, and you can see there that there's a bony core to this particular horn. And the horn covering is a sheath. They also got these ridges on them. And the ridges are used when they're jousting with one another as pressure ridges to stop the horns from sliding past one another and inflicting too much injury. So you can see that they lock against one another, and only with extreme effort or with a slight twist of the horn can they disengage, at which point a stabbing motion is aimed at the neck or the flanks of the opponent. And you can see there, although that's not sharp, with a little bit of weight behind it, it's not meant to do damage. They're meant to wrestle against one another. But if needs be, and if the competitors are roughly equal in power and size, then these horns can inflict terrible damage. And we see quite a lot of impala in the rut, especially the dominant impala, with holes in their necks and underneath their arms, and in some cases on their rumps, on their backside.
Sometimes missing an eye even.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
Betty Sleep, you wanted to know how these artifacts are preserved. Well, they're preserved in two different ways. You said bleached, scrubbed, or cured. Well, this one has been bleached by a professional. This one has been collected probably from a kill site that Karula made. So that one was professionally done. Of course, springbok do not occur in the Kruger National Park region. They only occur up in the desert regions and high-veld regions of South Africa. They're much better adapted to living in dry conditions. And they are gazelles, which are slightly different ungulates than from the antelope. I'm not entirely sure what the biological difference is, but they are slightly different. And I mean, we would have seen the gazelles the only gazelles we've seen on Safari Live have been the ones, of course, we saw in the Mara. Didn't we, Jandre? Yes, we did. He's smiling now at the memory of sharing a room with me for 10 days.
Oh, I've just got a question in from Chai Connie, who wants to know relative intelligence of these animals. And what I want to do for you, Chai, is this is a vervet monkey, a relatively intelligent being. Have a look at inside. This is where the spine joins the back of the head or the bottom of the skull, and where the extension of the brain goes. And you can see inside there is the brain cavity, yes. Now I would imagine that having a look at that and having a look at this one, although the aperture is bigger, this one would be bigger because it's a slightly bigger animal. The brain volumes are almost identical. Now, these antelope, they do fight to their heads, and so I would expect there to be a thickening of bone on the front of the skull. But I'm just going to use, obviously I have a better view of this than you do, but I'm just going to use my and James's comparison, and I would say that the skull of the vervet monkey, which is less than half the weight of a springbuck, is much bigger.
So that's the key, isn't it?
That's
the ratio.
The ratio, yeah. Brain weight to body mass, and the ratio that is, the closer it is to ours, the more intelligent the animals are. And this would obviously have a bigger brain weight to body mass ratio than this. Doesn't mean that these are completely, they're not imbeciles, they're not imbecilic, but they're a lot more, they're a lot more instinct driven than what these creatures are, at least.
James, Richard, you're interested in the social structure of the springbok and whether it's the same as Impala. It's not dissimilar, but the males don't tend to form bachelor groups, I don't think, too much. They set up little territories, and when the females wander through, they try and keep them in that area and cover them, and then they'll kind of be left to go off. I think that's probably a bit more wildebeest-like than it is Impala-like. So they don't form those bachelor herds, but the other thing that they do is breed twice a year, quite often, if conditions are, allow for it. So they have a much shorter gestation period. I think it's about 5 months or so. So that's what they do. It's now starting to rain again, unfortunately. So that's the case there, James, Richard. And I think we'll have another little discussion on intelligence when you come back from Tayla, who is now... she's actually got an animal to show you.
We have found a very damp Burchells starling. It's also very chatty. I'm just going to let you listen to it for just a moment. And now, of course, it's going to stop and eat. When it calls again, I'll sit quietly. But I think it's found a few termites. You hear it? You might also hear the pitter-patter of the rain. But this is one happy starling. Doesn't seem to mind the rain too much. Now, the rain has all of a sudden got a little bit heavier, as you can see. Very chatty this morning, quite happy. Normally you see them all miserable and fluffed up, trying to hide out of the weather. But I suppose it's been drizzling for a little bit. The ground is nice and soft, which makes it very easy to peck and find little insects, perhaps little ants, or again, like I said, the termites. Now, another bird that I can hear in the distance, which I was asking James about a few days ago, is the Burchells Coucal, or the rainbird. And it's got the most beautiful call. I suspect it may be a little bit far, but let's see if we can try and hear it. Now it's stopped calling. I'm just going to see if it's going to start again. No, now they're very quiet. Now, I don't know if some of you know what a Burchell's starling, a Burchell's Coucal is. It's a beautiful bird, and I'm actually going to try and find a photo for you. Let's get my book out, which has encountered lots and lots of rain before, so it's not scared. Where are you, Coucal? No, you must be over here. There we go. Almost there. Almost. Right. Now, if you have a look at the top over here, you can see where have you gone? There you are. The Burchells Coucal. You see that beautiful bird? Isn't it amazing? Now it's quite large, surprisingly. They're probably just longer than the length of a ruler, maybe 10 centimeters more or so. And they make the most beautiful call, and they are associated with the rain. They often are called the rainbirds. And normally, and I can only say for the Eastern Cape, because they were very accurate down on the southeast coast of South Africa, is they would always call just before the rains began, and then of course while it was raining they were also calling. They were quite beautiful. And we had some massive floods in 2012, and I'll never forget that the morning before the rain descended on us, I counted 22 Burchells starlings that morning. Well, that afternoon it thundered and lightninged and poured with rain that we had to evacuate guests. Isn't that incredible? Well, not incredible, but nature is amazing as how quickly it could bring rain that the next day everybody had to leave, especially the lodges down on the river, because the rivers, a lot of dam walls burst, and of course then increased the flow of water. And we almost lost one of the lodges. We lost a few boats. They capsized and went floating down the river. Now we're carrying along, and what I'm hoping to do is try and pick up on these lions. Oh, I've just got a little bit of water that's gone down my back and into my pants. Oh, that feels delicious. Isn't that amazing, Brian? Did you get some?
Yeah, my bum's wet.
Brian says his bum's wet already. I think he won that race. Something else I'd like to do as well is follow up on the lions. I don't know if you remember a few mornings ago, before Rusty had to be rushed to the emergency room, we found a magpie shrike nest, and I definitely like to try and follow up on that as well. But we're going to first try and find these lions. Now, I had a little look on the open area. I didn't see anything on the lions. Now we're just driving on the opposite bank of from where Twin Dams Road is, just to see if they perhaps haven't come down into this drainage and then crossed over. So we're just going to take it easy through here. It's going to make tracking very, very difficult for us this morning, which is not good, as the ground is very wet, and if the animals have walked, their tracks are now going to be covered with lots of tiny raindrops. Let's have a look. Oh, I can see the Burchells Coucal. Can you believe it? Can you see it in the tree there, Brian? Oh no, wait, we're going to try and roll. We have to go stealth mode. That's exciting. That's the first one I've seen. It's just flown back in here. Can you still see it? There it hops. Let's see if we can get a better shot. Now it's just hopping in the tops of the trees. There it is. Can you see the movement? So you can also see the movement of the aerial, but hopefully it will stop. Now in there is that Burchells Coucal that I was just showing you a picture of. Now I'm going to just sit quietly because I think it got slightly startled by the vehicle, but perhaps it'll jump down on some lower branches. Let me see if I can chuff it out. I don't think it will work with a Coucal though, but we can always try. Well, the rain is coming down quite heavily now. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move forward because I want to try and get a little bit of shelter out of this rain, and hopefully this Coucal doesn't fly off. I'm going to try to keep my eyes on it. Don't fly, we want to see you. Don't fly. Hang on. Let's see if I can find it. There it goes. Do you see it fly? Now, we're just looking at... Oh, no, I think it's just... Oh, there it is. Well, Brian, fantastic work from you. There we go. Have a quick look, because I don't think it's going to hang around for too long. So, like I said, the Burchells Coucal, and it's making an interesting sound. It's not happy about something. Perhaps it's complaining about the rain, which I'm about to start doing. Oh, look at everything getting wet. That's nice. I'm just covering my books. I forgot about them. I neglected them. So if you see the camera moving around, that was me just trying to cover all the very important items. Now, Chris, you were wondering how many different species of Coucals there are in this area. I've only ever seen the Burchells, but perhaps there's a few others that could occur. Should we have a little look? I'm going to quickly try and open my book again without getting it too wet, because it does love the rain, but I don't want all my pages to get stuck together. So we will quickly try and find out. Burchells is the most common around South Africa. Possibly, if you're very lucky, maybe if you go along the very the far east, you could maybe see a black Coucal, but I think you'd be extremely lucky. So, Chris, I'm just going to go and say that I think for us, it's just the Burchells Coucal. But oh, there's all different ones all over Africa and Zambia. We had the Senegal Coucal. Oh, there it still is. Hang on, it's hopping out again. Perhaps we may get one last look at this Coucal. Remember, if you do see a cloth coming across the screen, it is Brian. He's just wiping it to get rid of the drops. Now, these birds are quite incredible. I'm sorry, I got a bit sidetracked there. And they are incredible hunters too. So you often see them feeding on the ground and sort of pecking through the leaves like chickens, but not really after the smaller insects. They love big termites. I've even seen them eating big lizards and all sorts of other things. Even little mouse before, I've seen that. So they are ferocious predators. But everybody obviously takes an opportunity. Listen, listen. I'm going to sit quietly. There's a duet. I hope you all heard that. Really beautiful. Isn't that beautiful, listening to them call like that? Now, that is one of the most amazing sounds in the bush, so I hope you got an opportunity to hear that. It was a duet. Now, there's not much difference between the males and females, I'm afraid. Now, isn't this beautiful? Now, this really reminds me of home. This is what I know. This is what we used to hear every single day growing up in the gardens in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. So I'm getting all sorts of memories popping into my head of my childhood. I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. Now, Dispatch Griffin, you're wondering if this is perhaps the start of rainy season or if it's just a bit of off-chance rain. We're a little bit uncertain at the moment as to what's really going on. And now, we normally get big thunderstorms at this time of the year. We haven't really had any of those. It seems to just be the clouds coming over and we have a slight drizzle. I don't think it's going to rain for too much. There it disappears. I think it's gone a little bit down. There it goes. And off it flies. Oh, it's actually going to perch itself a little bit better on that dead dog tree over there. Can you see it just sitting on that branch? There it is. That's actually a very nice view of it. So, Dispatch Griffin, I'm reluctant to say that this is the start of the rainy season. I'll believe it when we get a big downpour, a really big downpour of 50 mils of rain or so with thunder and lightning, and then perhaps that will signal the start. I think it's still a little bit early. And off it goes. How wonderful was that? Thank you, Mr. Burchells Coucal, or Mrs. Burchells Coucal. Now, we're going to carry on in the search for the Nkahumas, and while we do that, let's go see how the men in the tent are doing.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the tent. Now, things are getting a little inclement outside, so Tayla's going to have to come home. You won't have to stay just Stef and I. You'll have the beauteous Tayla arriving fairly soon, I think. Now, we had a question, I think it was from Betty? That's the signal to the final control to tell me again. Oh. Name? Anyway, I think it was Betty. Sorry, Betty, if it was you, or mostly if it wasn't you. Wanted to see different wood grains under the microscope. This piece here is called a zebra wood, and you can see that Stefan, with his collection of terrifying knives, has just managed to clean us a nice edge there. So what we'll do is have a look at it under the microscope. There we are. And you can see it is very black. That is the zebra part of it. And indeed, David, it is very white. Jeffrey, sorry, from Texas, not Betty at all, wanted to know about the different grains of wood. So that's a zebra wood. That's actually a false kind of impression of the color and brought on by the microscope. But a zebra wood inside is actually more... Sorry, I've got a little bit confused here. Inside it's a kind of creamy color. Inside it's black, and then outside you get this kind of creamy color, and that's why it's called a zebra wood. Right, thank you very much.
Smell of there where I cut that one.
Yes, this everybody is the sneeze wood, Pterozygium obliquum. I remember that because I learned it on a walk with Stef and Scott once. Now look at the beautiful grain of wood there. And to Stef, this smells like, Stef?
Cheese curls, a type of a crisp flavoring here that's very, I suppose cheesy would be a good word, but it's that artificial cheese flavoring, that yellow dust that you find on some crisps around. That's, I don't know what else that
Those things
to
that
say.
you really shouldn't be giving your kids or eating yourself, but on the back end of a really hungry day, you just can't resist those sorts of things. Now let's have a look at the grain. There it is. And you can see the colour's very different, but I mean the grain is not particularly different, I suppose. Both quite dense, but the zebra wood probably the densest. But interestingly, those stripes, for those of you interested, are caused by the venation in the tree. So those are the veins. They were the veins, the xylem and phloem that carried water to the leaves and then carbohydrates from the leaves down to the bottom of the plant. It was through those very narrow capillary tubes there, xylem and phloem they're called, and that's when they died, of course, they became this dead wood, and that's what created the wood of this Pterizygum obliquum. Very nice. Now, let's just put that back and see what else we can show you.
I actually wouldn't mind.
Yeah?
I wouldn't mind trying to light this at some point.
Light it.
Yeah, it's apparently full of oil that comes out and under pressure. Let's see. So there used to be a type of bearing they made from this wood that it was basically a self-oiling bearing or self-lubricating bearing. For the life of me, I cannot remember what this bearing is called. It's at the tip of my tongue. It'll come to me when, of course, my mind is blank, which happens quite often, and then I'll tell you. But what should happen is the more we rub it, the shinier this piece of wood should get. And it's heat that brings out the oils in this wood. And I'm expecting to take my thumb away from this and to have it be quite shiny. Is that shiny, David? More shiny than it was? James?
It's positively glistening.
So that's that oil coming out there.
Why don't we try and set it alight?
So now, Chris, you've asked what is the oldest tree in this area. Chris, so in this local area, I would imagine that the oldest tree would either be a leadwood. I would imagine the oldest tree here would be one of the massive leadwoods that we have on Djuma. The oldest tree in this area, in where we are now, this local area, is a baobab tree that's located just outside Hoedspruit, and that is about 1,600 and something years old. The oldest tree in South Africa is an olive, a wild olive that is growing in the Waterberg, and they've aged that just over 3,000 years old, 3,500 years old.
That is amazing.
And the oldest tree in the world is also an olive, situated in Jerusalem at about 6,000 years old.
3,000 and 6,000.
Yeah.
And, well, yes, I was going to say something intemperate there, but I'm not going to say it anymore. So 6,000 years old, 3,000 years old, 1,600 years old. Ask Stef how on earth he knows that the tree in the Waterberg is the oldest tree in South Africa. Stefan, how do you know that?
A very good friend of mine was shown this tree by a botanist that was walking around with Eugene Marais. And Eugene Marais was a very famous South African naturalist and botanist. He used to walk around in an area called the Waterberg, which is close to Pretoria, and a local friend of his showed him this tree, which was then taken to the University of Pretoria and carbon dated, and so they have a fairly accurate record. I'm sure there are older trees in South Africa, but for now, there's just this one known example. I can get the exact years.
Just think about that for a second. I mean, 3,000 years ago was the year plus minus, well, not plus minus at all. So it was 1,020 BC, wasn't it? No, it wasn't. 2020, hang on 1 second, everybody. Less 1,000 would make it 1,004 BC.
Yep.
Is that right?
No. It's not, but it's somewhere around there. What James is trying to do is take 2016
let's just go to
and
1,000 BC plus minus and decide what the place must have looked like. 3,000 years ago, knocking about the Waterberg, there were probably the beginnings of the Bantu migration coming down the side of, or eastern and side of Africa, and the, I'll draw you a map of this actually, and down the plateau. They're just coming down into this area, very early sort of migrations maybe, but there would definitely have been sand people around here,
Yep.
Stone Age people around, very little in the way of iron working or copper working, of course, out in this area.
It was a
Round
little
about
bit.
Then there was a little
Yeah,
bit, hey?
yeah.
So can you imagine the stories that Olive Tree must have to tell, and more importantly, can you imagine the stories that 6,000-year-old one in Jerusalem have got to tell? Well, the stories that they have to tell, of course, are different from the stories that this zebra had to tell. I don't think that the zebra made it to 6,000 years old. Do you, Stef? No. Anyway, this is a bleached zebra skull. This was not killed by one of the animals here. I'm not sure where it was harvested, but we got it from a professional taxidermist. And I just think it's really quite impressive, the size. So I'll put it next to my head. Now, we were talking about relative intelligence a little bit earlier. If you look at the brain case of this zebra, it's probably, I mean, what would you say you could push in there? I'd say you could probably get a fairly substantial avocado pear, roughly that shape and size. And compared with the mass of the zebra, of course, that is very, very small indeed. And compared with your brain, compared with your mass, well, the zebra is just not going to come up to you on calculus, for example. They're not good at calculus, zebra. But what I think is also interesting, Stef was talking a lot yesterday about the muscle attachments. And we were talking about the jaws of the zebra. And when you mentioned it, I thought, well, I went to the skull straight away. And I thought to myself, I don't think those are as big as I expected them to be. And I wondered, and I don't know what you think, just to clear up what we're talking about here, the muscles attach over there, and actually probably to roundabout where my finger is, and they drive this very substantial bottom jaw, which obviously has to chew a huge amount of grass during the course of the zebra's life, if it lives to the age that this one did. I don't know how old this one was, but I'm going to say probably about 12 years or so. So those muscles attach to an extremely solid bottom jaw, which is actually at least as solid as a buffalo's.
At least.
And I think that's quite interesting. Why do you think a zebra should have such a heavy jaw in comparison with the buffaloes?
I would either imagine that it's... My initial thought goes straight to a bit of a defense like rhino that have a skull capable of taking a knock. Because a zebra, when they fight with one another, kick each other. And I think that having a stronger jaw, you might find, is working for some... You don't have the danger of breaking a jaw, which of course is the only way that you get to feed yourself. So that's... If I were to just, I don't know, that would probably be my exam question or my exam answer.
The other thing, of course, is that both a rhino and a zebra have got a completely different feeding strategy from something like a buffalo, and maybe the fact that they don't ruminate. And I also don't think, I've never seen a zebra biting with that round motion. They don't chew like a zebra, like a buffalo does. That's how a buffalo will chew its food, and it crushes the grass across the molars like that. These things tend to just sort of, a bit like us almost, chew like us and then swallow, and maybe that's got something to do with it. But when you say that it's quite similar to a rhino's, that is quite interesting. This one was in dire need of some orthodontic treatment at one stage. Anyway, on the subject of brain sizes and brain design, for a long time, remember, we on Safari Live here talk a huge amount about animal emotions, and the seat of the emotions, or the temperance of emotions and urges and that sort of instinctual responses, apparently supposed to be controlled, I think, by the frontal cortex, if I'm not mistaken, which is just in the front of your brain. And recent research shows that quite different from what we thought for a long time. In other words, that humans had a much more well-developed frontal cortex. Animals actually have proportionately the same size frontal cortex as we do. And so when we start talking about animal emotions, and we start talking and anthropomorphizing our emotions onto animals, we're probably not actually being that wishful. They probably do feel and react to emotions for very good biological reasons in much the same way that we do. And I always think that's quite nice, because as I've been banging on with lately, we all know, or anybody who's ever owned a cat or a dog knows, that an animal is not a completely sort of mindless and emotionless automaton. And I think that's quite nice science to back that up. Right, shall we find something else?
I think we should.
Yes. What I would like to do, actually, is get a drop of water from outside on one of these trees and look at it under the microscope. David, come out here. Let us check the weather. It's actually looking pretty good. Maybe we'll head out after all. Poor old Tayla will come back. She'll be freezing cold, and then we'll send her back out again. Now, this leaf of the silver cluster leaf how's that, David? Is holding the water because it's got hairs on it. And it's those hairs, of course, that give the silver cluster leaf its name. Silver, right? Shall we have a look at it under the microscope, David? Now, oh, it's quite pretty. There we are, everybody. Those are the drops of water on the silver cluster leaf. Isn't that pretty? The different sizes. Caught up in the hairs, the silver hairs, and you can see those silver hairs very clearly now. That's gorgeous, David. It's gorgeous.
Beautiful.
And there a caterpillar has had a bite. Very nice. Good. Okay, so that is the silver cluster leaf. Now, let's see what else we have here. Okay, and while we find the next thing to talk about, let's head to Tayla for an update on whether she is in fact coming home or not.
We're finally on Twin Dams Road. Now we're going to have a look to see where these lions popped out. I haven't seen any more tracks, I'm afraid, so I'm just avoiding the aerial. If you see me and it looks like I'm driving like I've had a few too many, please don't be alarmed. We often have to do this. That, and because of the tortoises I think we're going to see, as well as all the insects crossing the road, we all sort of drive and swerve. We never seem to really go in a straight line. Now, we're going through a little... Yeah, we've got, oh, well, we had some Impala, but my squeaky brakes unfortunately gave them a bit of a fright, and they darted off into the thicket. That's all right. Hopefully we're going to come around the corner and there's going to be a few damp cats, which I'd prefer to see. Just having a very quick look. I don't want to miss any tracks, because it would be really disappointing if I had to turn around and go back the way I've just come from. I'm just going to take it very easy over here. The ground's quite hard, as on, like I said, with the droplets falling in the track, it makes it just that much more difficult for us to try and find them. But it doesn't seem like they've come here. Well, they haven't walked on the road, but they could have walked somewhere else. Right, just have a little look. Lots of fresh buffalo tracks though, and buffalo dung, which that's a good sign for us. So it seems as though it's difficult to see. It was just before the rain, it looks like, that there were quite a few. If you see some buffalo dung on the road just over there. Now you can see that fresh little patty over there, and there's lots of tracks that are going around as well. Now if this is the direction that the kahumas were coming, that's great. That's good news for us. Perhaps maybe they heard something, so that's what we're going to keep looking out for. Quite exciting. I like it when we find... No, not yet. There's a trick to turning jigger on. I'm still learning. Now ideally I would have preferred to have seen some lion tracks going over the buffalo footprints and the buffalo dung, but alas we haven't. But that's okay. No, still just lots and lots of buffalo. Goodness, you couldn't drive 10 meters over the last few days without bumping into an elephant, and they seem to have disappeared. Right, let's have a quick look here. If the rain holds off, it got quite heavy earlier and we were contemplating coming back, but it seems to have settled down quite nicely. Then we will perhaps go back for the magpie strike nest. But for now, we're unsure of what we're going to do. We don't want to get this wonderful equipment too wet. So we were just going to try and have a look for the lions for the moment. Okay, can't see anything here. I'm just passing Ingwe Alley now. Oh, the ground is sort of nice and soft. Maybe they even went back to that old kill, but I can't imagine that there was anything left on that buffalo carcass from yesterday morning. But if we don't find them here, then perhaps we'll have to go in and have a look. Ah, we've got vultures. Well spotted, Brian. Oh, quickie breaks. Just let everyone know we're here. You've got a few white-backed vultures perched up nicely in what used to be a knobthorn. Now again, possibly the lions are around. We're going to have a little look, or perhaps they've just decided to roost here for the evening. We're uncertain. It's sort of the similar thing that we saw yesterday morning when it was a bit miserable. And they just sort of rested up in a few trees, waiting for the clouds to lift. Oh, have a look at the one that's got its wings open. Oh, it did have its wings open. Let's see if it does it again. There it is. Standing like that. I think everybody's a little bit on the wet side this morning, and perhaps opening his wings like that is allowing the small breeze, the gentle breeze that we've got to dry the inside of its feathers. Now, if you look at the vultures, I don't know if you can see around their body, they're quite fluffy, and they've got a lovely layer of down feathers, and that they need because they fly up to very, very high altitudes. Oh, that's that wasn't very nice. Don't open your wings too far. That's in my space. It's sort of like when you eat around the table, have dinner around the table with your family, and somebody bumps you with their elbows. You know, you give them a jab back. But as I was saying, is that they need those lovely fluffy feathers so that they can keep warm when they fly a few thousand feet up into the air. But that's quite funny to see the three of them. It's like Tweedledee, Tweedledum, and their cousin Jack, or whoever it is that's visiting for the weekend. They don't look too happy though this morning. And as we're sitting here looking, I'm also scanning around, listening, hopefully trying to hear a contact call or something like that. But it doesn't seem as though we're going to be too lucky. There's another one with. Now, we've often been seeing the larger birds, so from the big eagles to the southern ground hornbills to the vultures, roosting up or even just resting on these dead trees. And I know Faith was wondering if that was for any particular reason. Now, Faith, remember, when you've got massive wings like that, it actually is easier to sit in a dead tree when there's not a lot of foliage around. So I think that they would prefer to sit in a tree like this. However, on a hot summer's day, I don't think they would mind sitting on the branch of a marula with a bit of shade if it has got some leaves. So I think it all depends. But I think for taking off, it's a lot easier to do it from a dead tree. Brian, can we go back into that vulture that we were just looking at? I just noticed something. Now, have a look at that vulture's crop. Can you see how full it is? You see there, it's sort of bulging from its neck. Now, I think that those lions have definitely moved from their carcass, and I think that's why these vultures have a bit of a full crop, is perhaps they got to scavenge on a few little bits. So maybe it would be worthwhile us taking a little drive and heading back to that old site and just to have a look, because I haven't seen any tracks here just yet. So perhaps they still are in the same spot. But let's carry on while we've got a gap in the weather before it decides to come back down on us. We're going to go around. Oh, I think what is coming up ahead? What? I've seen something. I saw something jumping. It could be an impala. I'm not sure. So I get very excited. I just want to have a very quick look at what it was. Please be the lions. Please, please, please be the little cubs running around. I don't think. No, it's impala. But Impala, good morning. We haven't said hello to you yet. Right, let's try and get another little look at these impala. So I'm also just looking around me, just to make sure that I don't miss the lions. There we go, some impala. Right, now if you're not unsure of what this is an impala, which is the most common antelope in Africa, and we see them all the time. We've actually been quite spoiled this morning already. We've seen quite a few different birds already, quite a few different antelope species. The birds seem to be taking the lead this morning, though. And good morning, Soraya. You want to know, are there more animal species before or after the rain? Now, it depends. If you've had a bit of a drought like what we've experienced, when we get our first rain, it's quite spectacular as to what you start to see. Because you get all the reptiles, all the tortoises, and all the interesting things, all the frogs coming out that we don't normally see in the dry conditions. So I'm going to have to say, after the first rains, I think we see many more species. Because not just the big mammals, but we start to see the reptiles. We start to see more insects. We start to see a few different things. I can see the Impala also. Everybody's wet. They don't look too miserable, though. They look all right. Listening carefully. Lovely. Now, as we're chatting about the rain and we're watching his damp Impala, and on the topic of variety of species, Jason was wondering, are there any species of animals or creatures that we see out here that you only see in the rain? Now, something that we see a lot of during the rain is normally, but we're still waiting, is usually the African land snails. And I know there are a few viewers out there who are quite excited to see the first African land snails. We've just been seeing a lot of shells. I'm trying to think what else we see just in the rain. Brian, can you think of anything that we just see in the rain? Any? Not anything specific. But apparently Burchells, Coucals, because I haven't seen them here yet. They only seem to come out with the rain. So I'm not 100% certain, though it is early morning and my mind could be boggled. And there could be an easy example that I'm completely forgetting and missing. Let's carry on down the road. See, we're getting closer and closer to where the lions were last seen. So perhaps we're going to come up to them shortly. Just going to take a little drive along here. Should we do some raindrop appreciation? Very squeaky. Look how pretty those raindrops are. I want to very quickly show you Brian's magic camera work, but just how beautiful is this? This is something we don't often get to see, and something we don't spend time with. But look at all those lovely droplets. It's beautiful. It's so lovely this morning. It's not too wet, but sort of just the right amount of drizzle that we've had. It sort of has revitalized everything. That's beautiful. I love the way that the morning light is catching those droplets. You're going to see lots of very happy insects that will drink the water from the droplets. There's not really any puddles that are formed on the ground for them to drink from, and all. So anything that's up there will be utilizing the little droplets so that are caught by the leaves and by the grass. Isn't that nice? To finally see the lovely bright shades of green that are popping in the dark grey vegetation. Now, let's carry on though. I think let's continue our search for the wonderful Nkuhumas. We're just going to head up around the corner. Ooh, go jigger. Right. So, have anybody heard a woodlands kingfisher just yet? I'm wondering, because I haven't been out. I don't get to go out all the time. I'm just wondering, I haven't heard anything just yet. I'm sure they're going to plague us around the camp, which will be great. I'm excited to see them. Now, I'm going to keep you updated with my search, but while I carry on attempting to track the Nkuhumas, James got something colourful for you.
A snake, everybody, retrieved this very morning by Peter Braat at the Gari Repeater, where he was doing some technical stuff. Oh, it's got a bit of a nif to it. It's obviously quite fresh, and it's probably wet from the rain, not from the snake itself. But I'm going to leave. Oh, that really doesn't smell nice at all. Okay, thank you, Peter, for that. Now, let's have a look over here. We had a question from Jason about looking at butterfly scales under the microscope. There are a little collection of butterflies. This is a wonderful collection of insects from the University of Pretoria. And what we'll do is put the microscope over there and have a look-see. On the weather front from outside the tent, it does look like it's starting to clear a bit, but I'm not sure how much it's going to. So we'll give it a little bit more time here, and then we might think about going out. So there are the scales on a butterfly's wings. Now those are those little squares there. They are what give the butterfly its colors. And you can see that they come off. You can see they don't stay on forever. And that is the kind of thing that comes off in your hands when you pick up a moth. Is that cool? I think that's really quite cool. Now there's its head. You can see its eyes and its feelers and its little mouth parts. Rebecca has described this as super pretty. It looks like a mosaic. Yes, indeed. Rebecca, of course, is a millennial. And so words like, or descriptors like super pretty are, well, relevant. Right, there we are. Okay, let's have another look. What I'm going to do is try and set up another shot of a moth here and just see if we can see the difference. We can, actually. Have a look at that. That's the moth's wing. And moths tend to be, I guess, a little bit more hairy than butterflies. You can see there, but there you can see the scales as well. Very similar. And also the veins in which the hemolymph keeps the hydraulic pressure up that keeps the wings taut. Isn't that cool? I think that's rather gorgeous. Don't you, David?
Yep.
Yes. Good. That is the that's the pin that has pinned this moth into its cage. I don't know why I think that's funny, David. I'm sorry. Right. Okay, that's the moth. Very nice. Now, I have drawn something very special for you, everybody, and as you all know, I'm a spectacularly good artist. And so what we're going to do is go and have a look at my sublime drawing, and then we're going to see how good Stef is at drawing. I did this for our rehearsal yesterday, and I drew a family tree, if you like, of the leopards of this area. I left out Karula's parents, and I put in, of course, that's Karula there. That's her crown. And I put in her spot pattern. You can see she has 3 spots on her right, our left, and 4 the other side, 3, 4. Then we have shadow over here. Very nice. She's also got a crown, but it's a bit smaller. She too is 3, 4 on either side of the nose. And I'm going to explain what I mean if you don't know very shortly. Then there is, of course, over here Thandi. Thandi has got 2 babies herself. She is 3, 3 is Thandi. We don't know what those babies are, male or female. Then Karula, of course, has had 4 litters, so or 5 litters, and 4 she's raised to independence. So we've got that litter and those ones there. We won't worry about that. And then she, of course, has little Hosana and little Shongile. There is Hosana, and he is 3, 3, and Shongile is 4, 3. I think she's 4, 3 and not 3, 4, if I'm not mistaken. So that's how it works. Now, if you draw a nose of a cat, which looks something like that, David?
Yes.
Yes. You see how it looks exactly like a cat, with the nostrils as such. But I actually can't picture it now. Sorry, let me do that once more. It's really depressing when you can't draw. I'm just going to draw that little shape there. Now that's the mouth. Of course, you can see there, that's the mouth of the cat. And above it, there will be the whiskers. And above the whiskers kind of are dotted around there like that. And above the whisker line, you will have this distinct spotting. So on Karula, who is our most famous, she's 3 here. She's got 3. I'm not sure if they're exactly in a line. I forget. And then she's got 4 on this side. And that is how I always find it easier to identify leopards. Of course, Karula has a number of distinct, different kinds of different kinds of spots. I'm laughing now because Rebecca has said, when we're ready, we're going to show you a clip of Hosanna having his mistakes fixed by his mother, the Queen.
He's about to give us another demonstration of his problem-solving abilities. Oh, shame. Oh, dear. He's about to go head over heels out of the tree. I mean, how on earth he's balancing that is the least elegant position I've seen a leopard in a long time. But somehow it's working for him. He's managed to get his head into the carcass itself. And at least he's given up chewing the piece of skin that was holding it on, which was what he was doing earlier. Oh dear, little one. The situation that her cubs have put her in. Let's see if she's any better at this than Hosanna is. Oh, too much happening here. There's a harrier hawk flying overhead. There's gorilla pulling the kill into the tree. Let's watch her do this. I'll keep an eye on where the harrier hawk goes. Oh dear. This is a tricky spot, isn't it, Gorilla? Luckily you've got a bit more strength than your... Oh, shame. Oh dear, that wasn't very easy, was it? Well done. Clever girl. Much better, sort of. Not the most stable of branches, but at least it's up. I mean, that takes some serious skill. It's basically, imagine if you had to try and eat your dinner with no knives and forks hanging from a marula tree with your claws. It's not all that easy. Especially since the impala meat's quite tough for tiny teeth and tiny jaws. So it's difficult for them to really get in there properly. Wow. That was an impressive display of strength. She hasn't thought it through though, because that impala ram's horns are going to get stuck. But that was seriously impressive. He's about to give us another demonstration.
And that, everybody, is why she's managed to raise herself 10 litters of cubs, or 5 litters of cubs. Now, have a look over here. My friend Stefan has drawn a very beautiful map. Can you see that? That is Africa, everybody. What do you think, David? You think he's a better artist than I am? Definitely not. Good answer, David. Well done. That's where we are there. That is the Kruger National Park down there, signified by a K. This is what one might describe as minimalist art, I think. Now, what I wanted to draw for you here is the escarpment. So this is the mountains of South Africa, the Drakensberg. They stretch up there like that. And on top of that is the plateau region. I'm going to call this P for... No, I won't. I'm going to call it H for Highveld. And I'm going to call this L for Lowveld. Now, when people came... Well, the first people to be in South Africa were unquestionably well, initially it was the Australopithecines, I suppose. But the first anatomically modern human beings probably left their descendants as the Bushmen or the Sand people that still live in South Africa to this day. So they were here, we'll say, forever. Then, coming down from the sort of equatorial regions here, there was a migration of what we call the Bantu people, and they are now the vast majority of the people in South Africa. And we think, quite unlike the politicians would have had us believe during much of the 20th century, that the archaeological evidence shows that the Bantu people have been in this area specifically for at least the last 1,000 years or so. So they came down in 2 waves. One came down the central regions on the plateau. Look how beautiful my arrow is, David. Isn't that nice? Yes. And then another bunch came down the coastal regions there, Oh dear, my second arrow didn't go so well. And in the Highveld region here, this group turned into the people that spoke the languages of Sotho and Pedi, so the Sotho languages, which are distinct from the Nguni languages that came down the coast, and these turned into the people that now talk isiXhosa or Zulu, both of which are very similar. So those are 4 of the languages that are spoken in South Africa. They are similar and they're related to each other, and they're part of a language group called the Niger-Congo and a smaller group called the Bantu languages, and they all actually are related to the languages of the people spoken up in this region here, and that's how we know that they came down. Well, that's how linguistically we can tell that they are related. So that's happened there. Then of course, we had one more migration of people down this end. Well, not so much a migration, but there was a dwelling of people here, and these were what do we call the Khoisan, and they were living around this area here. This is where the Cape is, when the white settlers arrived circa 1652. Jan van Riebeeck and his boat, the Dromedaris, which is not a relevant part of Safari Live. Now, a nice question from the name I'm afraid I've forgotten, about what incident caused the most effect on African wildlife. And I'm going to bring Stefan in here and see if he agrees with me. I would have said it was the advent of ivory hunting. Would you have said?
Yeah. Commercial trade in meat, I think, was what I would say. So the bluebuck, which occurred over here, was almost completely wiped out due to the food needs of Cape Town, and obviously Cape Town being a trade route, joining the European and Americas to the east, basically, and the trade routes in the east. So they used to restock with food and vegetables, and they wiped out an antelope called the bluebuck. They also did significant damage to springbuck populations. And then with the finding of gold on the Highveld, the need for food wiped out the springbuck populations in the center of the country, and had lots of damage on ivory, a bit meat trade. So by the time the 1900s came along, there was very few animals in the Kruger National Park whatsoever. No elephant.
Something like 10 elephant when the Kruger Park was, or the Sabi Game Reserve was designated in 1898, I think.
Yeah, I read a crazy fact saying that there were footprints in 1900. There were footprints seen in the Kruger National Park of some elephant, and then in 1903 or 1905, 3 or 5 elephant walked across from Mozambique into the Kruger Park. So today we have, I don't know, anywhere between 16 and 17,000. Yeah, so I would say that people had the largest impact on the local wildlife, and then second to that, disease, I think. But that's been going on forever, so... You know.
But that's quite interesting, and what is noticeable, of course, is that for 1,000 years or so, before the advent of the colonists with guns, basically, and the advent of commercialism, I suppose, in South Africa, the animals here lived... Now, I don't believe in the term harmony with man. I don't believe any creature lives in harmony with any other creature, but there was a balance, a dynamic equilibrium between predator and prey. And the local people here had an almost negligible effect on animal populations. It was only with the advent of commercial ivory hunting, commercial meat hunting, which of course was brought about by the need, as Stef says, just to keep you posted, that this is where Johannesburg is. That's the gold mines that Stef's talking about. This was the Cape over here where all that farming was done. And of course there was diamond around here in Kimberley. So it was diamonds and gold that probably drove the extinction of those massive, massive herds of springbok. Millions and millions and millions of springbok that were taken out. For
very similar hunting. To the bison in North America, just to feed people, really. Now, Stalker's asked, while we're looking at sort of paleoanthropology, Stalker's asked, what, if any, dinosaur bones have been found in South Africa? Stalk, there's quite a lot, in actual fact. There's... South Africa pretty much leads the race underneath a doctor called Guy Berger at the moment in terms of human evolution and human-like forms, I suppose, or human-like species evolution. In terms of dinosaurs, quite a few dinosaur bones have been discovered in South Africa. I'm not an archaeologist. For me to say exactly where and what significant finds, I can't, other than they are around Clarence, which is around here in the Drakensberg. There are some footprints, fossilized footprints of some dinosaurs. But, you know, good question there, Stork. You know, for me, it's unanswerable. I just know that South Africa leads in paleoanthropology, it leads the race in terms of fossil finds, or significant fossil finds, at least anyway, recently. But in terms of dinosaurs, I'm not too sure at all.
As far as I'm aware, we don't have any of the kind of iconic dinosaurs. There are no T-Rexes or Brontosauruses or anything like that that have been found here, but there are smaller examples of them. All right, Tayla is still braving it out there. I feel slightly bad, but not really. Let's go and find out how that's going.
We've just come to check where James said he heard the very lion-sounding noises. Now, I only can see lots and lots of Impala. We're back on Mvubu Road again. I'm just trying to very quickly have a chat with Mike and Andrew to find out what was happening with Karula. Can you copy me now? They don't seem to be able to hear me very well. Let's try it again. Mike, if you can copy me, I'm trying to find out what the last location of a Karula was. I'm just trying to see if there's anything happening with Karula. Yes, I wasn't in that sighting. That's why I'm asking what the location of that sighting was. It'd be just a moment. Right, they're just quickly listening. Right. I'm having a little listen. Okay, very interesting. Copy, thank you. Right, so I've just got some very interesting news that perhaps Karula could still be around, which is quite exciting. I'm not having very much luck with the Nkahumas, and I suspect that they've gone down into the drainage because we've driven here and I haven't seen any more tracks. I did see some tracks on Twin Dams Road, so it's very, very squeaky, I'm afraid. And the tracks are going up and down, so I suspect one set of tracks was coming to drink and the other set was going away, but they disappeared. And with the ground being so hard now and the tracks not showing so nicely, I wasn't able to establish exactly where they were going to and which drainage line they disappeared down on, because they're definitely not on any of the roads. So I'm going to give it one more go, and then if I don't get lucky, I'm just triple checking everywhere that I look, then perhaps we're going to try and follow up on Karula and see if she is not around in the same spot. I'm not sure how much meat would be left though with those two hungry cubs. They would have gutsed, I'm sure, most of that Impala. But let me just have another little scan here. The rain is now completely subsided, well, for the moment, so perhaps everything's going to come out of its hiding spot. Let's have a quick scan. I don't want to miss anything. No, it doesn't look like they're here. They must be in a drainage somewhere. And I did stop and have a little listen as well, but I couldn't hear any noises. This is interesting. Ooh. So, just triple checking. We've driven here before. I've checked the tracks. Still nothing new. Just want to double check down in here. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but some of us keep getting the sniffles early in the morning, and that's because of all this weather that we've been having. 1 minute it's hot, next minute it's freezing cold. Our bodies don't really seem to know what to do. And Faith was wondering, are there any animals that sort of struggle with the hot and cold of the weather? I don't think so, Faith. I think the animals are a lot more equipped to drastic weather changes than we are. Remember, they've got the lovely coats of hair, or they've got feathers to keep them nice and warm, or they use a variety of different techniques to try and keep the temperature nice and warm. On the cold days, I think the reptiles obviously struggle, especially if it's been nice and hot, probably just starting to get back into routine, and then they've got to go back and hide away again because it's too cold. So I think insects and the reptiles, if anything, don't enjoy the cold weather, but everything else seems to carry on. I like the hot weather. The hot weather is my favorite, just because you know you're going to see lots of animals coming down to the watering holes if you haven't had too much rain. Now I'm going to just double, triple, quadruple check that they didn't maybe do a sneaky and come up here to one of their favorite roads, up Gowrie cut line, but no, it doesn't look like it. These footprints, so there's lots of impalas. The impalas have all walked on top of each other and on each other's footprints. Oh, yes, thanks, Brian. I'm just doing a quick little circle over here. We're going to just carry on quickly checking. We had a roadblock. See if those lions have come down here. That's the problem. Sometimes you get your head so stuck down on the ground you forget what else is around you. Let's see. No, it doesn't look like they've come here. But we will check this Gowrie cut line just in case. Remember when I was looking for the lions, was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday morning, yes. And we were tracking them all the way up on Buffels Hook cut line. And then they were eventually found by good old Rex down quite not too far from Quarantine. Now they have a habit of using these drainage lines to move in. So I am checking very carefully. Perhaps they are on the move. It's nice and cool, so it wouldn't surprise me if they perhaps are wandering around instead of sleeping. I think they'll take advantage of this cool, damp weather. Now this is a nice road because it leaves lots of wonderful footprints. So we would be able to see the lions' tracks quite easily if they walked out here. But otherwise, if they walked down in the drainage below us, that would be a little bit more difficult. And I'd have to rely, or like I'm doing now, on actually physically looking to spot them. Doesn't seem to be much happening around here. Naughty lions. Naughty, naughty, naughty lions. Oh, should we have a little look and see if we can perhaps find anything in this fallen marula tree? I'm going to jump off very quickly. You can hear, you know when I'm about to stop because the squeaks are quite impressive. I need to just rearrange my clothing again. It's now very wet and all stuck to me, so that's nice. Now, I just want to have a very quick look. You might see that I have a wet bottom. So Brian, don't just zoom in. So something like this, especially after a little bit of rain, would be quite nice to look for some insects, perhaps even a scorpion. Maybe it would have flushed them out. Though it wasn't particularly hard, but I can see that the termites have completely devoured what once was, it looks like it was a marula at one point. This is quite old. It looks like a fire has gone through here too and perhaps burnt it away. But now we see a lot of the bark scorpions living in something like this. So I'm going to have a very quick little look and hope to not get stung in the process, but it doesn't seem like there's anybody home. And also obviously look around me and hope that there's no more buffalo or no lions. No, it doesn't look like there's much here. Quite interesting. Just lots and lots of bark, but no insects. I thought we were going to see some, at least find something creeping, crawling. I thought maybe even a millipede would have been lurking around here, feeding on all the dead leaves that are surrounding this marula, but apparently not. So we'll jump back in again. We'll continue the search. I've got a hat before, so I can avoid getting a wet bum again. This is what went down to my pants earlier. I don't know if you can see. Can you see all that wonderful water? Isn't that amazing?
That's wonderful.
Is it wonderful? Now, I don't want that to go on. Oh, we've got the antlion again. Sorry, I got distracted. Can we see it? Look at it sitting so nicely. Hi, antlion. There it is. Now, I'm not going to touch it this time because I don't want it to fly away. Now, you can see those clubbed antennae that I was talking about, whereas the dragonflies don't have that. And, of course, the wings resting against its body, whereas a dragonfly would have its wings sort of splayed out. Isn't that beautiful? Now, you unfortunately cannot live on the canvas because I suspect you will get squashed, and we don't want you to get squashed. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to release it. This would be a good meal for a bird. I'm going to try and catch it so it's going to disappear, but I want to put it out. Now the rescue mission is complete, and let's pour the water out at the same time. No more wet bums, no more wet bums. Okay, let's put you on the stick. No, not on the stick, it's flying. Okay, well, it can fly away then. Right, get plugged back in again. Okay, I'm in. I can breathe again. Ooh, hello. A bit excited. Giga obviously missed me. Let's carry on. I'm hearing all sorts of wonderful things in my ears. James and Stef having a conversation. It's lovely. I think that they're discussing if they're going to have tea and scones for breakfast this morning. Now, doesn't seem to be too much happening down this road, so like I said, I definitely suspect that those lines are moving in the drainage line somewhere. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to carry on. I'm going to give the lions a skip this morning. We'll let them get away with it, unless perhaps if you see them pop out on the dam cam somewhere, please let me know. You can either hashtag Safari Live, or you could also send us a message, an email, questions at WildEarthTV. And I think what I would like to do, seeing as I haven't seen any leopards since I've been back at work, is possibly try and follow up on Coucal. Now, I couldn't quite understand what Andrew was saying. Just there was a little bit of interference with the radio. So hopefully once I get a little bit further east, they'll be able to hear me a bit better. But it sounded like something that I should go and check the last area that Coucal was seen. Well, I think it was with Brent yesterday. So that's basically what we're going to go and do and have a look at. So you're going to hear me chatting away now. Rebecca, I am on Rusty. Rebecca just wanted to quickly find out something, what channel of communication I am on. Right, who else have we got here? Where are all the little creepy crawlies? Where are the millipedes? I'd like to see a millipede this morning. If you have anything that you'd perhaps like to see that maybe you haven't seen for a long time, let me know. And then we can try and find it. And that's perhaps why we're having a quiet. So you better send in your orders quickly. And now all the birds have gone. I was saying to Brian that it's bizarre how always on the cloudy, overcast, rainy days we see so many more birds than we do on the lovely blue, clear skies when it has an amazing backdrop. And now, as I said that earlier, the birds have all seemed to have disappeared as well. Okay, what else do we have over here? We've got a bird. What bird do we have up on the top of the tree? Can you see it up there? What are you? Are you a starling of some sort? Yes, it looks like a violet-backed starling, doesn't it? Does it? Are you? I think you are, but I can't see very well because, yes, it is. Look at that. So you see, I was looking at a bit of a silhouette, and that looks like a violet-backed starling.